Hello. Today I will be finally featuring one of my absolute favorite cruisers in the game, the Hindenburg. I have been testing and shifting builds and testing different things until finally I decided, nope, it's time to return to the basics. It's time to go full DPM god on this thing and rely on the massive damage this ship can put out more than anything. I noticed myself that when I switched to range and stuff, I actually didn't really play the Hindenburg that much, because instead of being that DPM monster, it was kind of boring. I mean, if you're gonna do range spam, might as well play Zhao, and sitting at far range and shooting HE, it felt so dirty on the Hindenburg, and I really wanted the return of that good old AP monster playstyle that I absolutely loved, that aggressive, insane damage kind of style, which has been very hard because the meta is so incredibly passive. However, Wargaming actually introduced such a fantastic perk. I hope they never nerf it, because I love the concept of the perk, which is of course Adrenaline Rush, or Rage as I like to call it. And this perk of course gives you faster reload the more damage you take on all armaments. Well, it's going not quite all, it's not affecting secondaries yet, but that's intended to be added, that it affects secondaries as well, which might make me reconsider some, for example, my Grosse Korfors build and such things. Well, actually I'm probably running AR on it anyway, but secondaries might gain some benefit from it. But anyway, regardless, the Hindenburg. As you might notice, I am back on the reload mod. The range is only 17.8, which actually makes it, besides the Minotaur, some of the shortest range in the game, but in return of course the DPM has gained that lovely buff in damage. And ultimately with this new build, the idea is that you are supposed to be survivable enough, tanky enough or stealthy enough to be able to close the distance and actually make use of this great gun power. First you might notice priority target, which of course lets me know who's focusing me. Only one person is focusing me right now. Second one is of course superintendent. You want that additional heal if you're going to be closing the distance. And I also run vigilance because, as you see, I'm running defensive AA. Ultimately, one of the things that bothered me most about my test build, which I ran, where I was heavily AA focused, was, well, first of all, there's almost no carriers, which means that I was literally felt like I was wasting 8 captain perk points on something that never really came in useful. Second of all, it was really hard to make hydroacoustic search work because people tend to stay so far away from you. Actually getting within 6 km range of anything in the Hindenburg was challenging, especially a DD who would actively avoid you. So hydroacoustic search, besides for defending against torps, felt completely useless. So that's one of the reasons I completely scrapped the old build. I threw away AFT, I threw away manual AA, and I threw away hydroacoustic search. If I want carrier protection, I'll just use defensive AA, that's fine. And instead I focused on more personal defense. I also of course get demolition expert, because even if you are focusing on heavy AP damage, that doesn't mean that you should neglect your HE. The HE has been buffed significantly on this ship. And of course you are quite a good fire starter. You've probably seen my HE or the vid where I focus on only shooting HE in my Hindenburg, and I do like her 200k damage. So the HE is by no means weak. It's a great tool as well, and just like any tool, it should be used. So demolition expert to buff up the HE with that additional fire chance. But mostly of course, with this build you are close enough that you can use the AP the most, and that's of course going to be our focus here. This guy should die, didn't get the kill, that's unfortunate. He is angled, so I'll stick to HE until he actually gives me a broadside. So of course adding in the adrenaline rush into this already reload survivable heavy build means that you can reach some pretty obscene damage numbers. I already calculated back in the day that you could reach something like 880k potential AP DPM if you had reload mod and got to shoot all the guns. That's of course the potential peak DPM. But now when you add in AR as well, and you can actually get your reload below 8 seconds, it's become absolutely disgusting. The amount of damage you can put out, it's been just obscene, and I've loved it. It's been so much fun. I can charge in, and before they kill me, especially those last few seconds, or well, the last minute, let's say, before they actually finish me off, the amount of damage the ship can pump out has been absolutely disgusting, and I've found it completely hilarious and enjoyed every second. Ah, shit. I always underestimate how quickly the Minotaur accelerates. For those that aren't aware, the Minotaur accelerates exceptionally well while turning. So when you shoot at any other cruiser, you can aim probably where I was aiming, but on the Minotaur you have to take an additional lead because the ship accelerates so damn well when it turns. So that's why he was able to avoid that volley that I was hoping would actually nail him. Regardless, we're going to be closing the distance here. They are fleeing, and well, some of them aren't. Fredrik Grosse, is he reversing? I'm not even certain. There is a Minotaur up there. I'm constantly spotted, of course. It looks like the Minotaur is aiming at me. That's perfectly okay. You are not really that afraid of the Minotaur in the ship, mostly because, first of all, well, the Minotaur melts any ship that gives you broadside. But the Hindenburg, of course, for those that aren't aware, it has a bit of a turtleback, which means it's pretty tricky to citadel the ship. And if you don't give broadside, well, the Minotaur really isn't going to be that much of a threat. Yes, he'll do some damage to you, some sustained damage, but you can kind of withstand it. The Minotaur, in fact, is opening up on me. I'm kind of ignoring him. He's in the smoke. I can't really see him. I can't really reach him. I'm just going to start focusing on the angle Fredrik the Grosse. Because he's angled, of course, I stick to HE. He did repair one of my fires as well, so I know he's used his damage con. Very tempted to use AP because he's giving this much broadside. If he's going to keep sailing full broadside... Oh, never mind. Well, his repair has run out and that fire should stick, so there's of course the value of using HE as well. You see the Minotaur has been constantly focusing me. He's constantly shooting on me, trying to kill me off before I reach him. And he launched some torps on the turrets as well. I got a second fire, this guy's guaranteed dead. This kill I actually got, but I'm continuing to just push into this Minotaur. And you see the actual damage it does to me is very small. This is of course the weakness of the Minotaur. You can't smoke up in an exposed position like this, especially not against the Hindenburg, because I will just rush you down. And since I know he's already used the torps on that one side, he used them on the turrets. Well, even less for me to worry about. And of course, because I run stealth, when I stopped firing, I'm now undetected, so you can't even see me. His Hydra does pick me up, but that means I'm closing in very, very quickly. There he is. Oh, he's turning to use his torps, so I wait patiently until I get the guaranteed citadel. And as he turns for the torpedoes, those are some easy triple citadels for me, and the Minotaur is deleted. So, even though the Minotaur of course has a lot of strengths, and something I might consider probably one of the strongest cruisers in the game, it also has some pretty obvious drawbacks that if you're able to exploit them, you can punish that ship quite heavily. The game is starting to look pretty decided here, but at this distance, well, first of all, I'm half HP, well, almost half HP, so you can already start noticing the difference adrenaline rush is doing to my reload. And this of course makes this also a pretty disgusting fire starter when the reload is 8 seconds and you're able to fire 12 shells. And what was the fire chance? I think with Demolition Expert you have something like 15% fire chance on each shell. So you kind of turn into this pretty disgusting Kutuzov type of ship. Just extremely good reload and pretty good arcs, and just the damage is of course pretty low, but that's mostly because your HE alpha is so low. I see a lot of people constantly ask about running stuff like IFHE or HEAP, whatever you want to call it, on Hindenburg, but just don't, no, absolutely not. You shouldn't run it on any tier 10 cruisers because it doesn't help your 203mm damage at all. The only thing it does is add more penetration, but the values that the 25 penetration it gives doesn't actually allow you to pen any surfaces that you couldn't pen otherwise anyway. So any shattered shells you see now, even if I ran IFHE, these shells would still shatter. So there is absolutely no point to run IFHE on the Hindenburg. Just don't do it. It's not valuable on Moskva, it's not valuable on the Tsar. If you are running it, you're actually negatively impacting your ship, because you're reducing the fire chance, but you're not getting anything in return. So not only are you throwing away captain perk points, you are also negatively impacting your ship. As look at my commentaries in the past, there are ships I recommend IFHE on. These are guns that can shoot, ships that can shoot 150 to 155 millimeter HE shells, and there are exceptions, like some ships that shoot very quickly, like for example the Atlanta. 130 millimeter, or well, 100 to 130 millimeter guns also gain some benefit, and even 180 millimeter guns can gain some benefit. But 203 millimeter guns, they gain no benefit at all, so just don't bother. Take my word for it. You're not going to see any increase. If you think you've seen some increase, well, that's just a placebo effect. The same type of shells, same type of shatters you would see would shatter anyway. Montana is giving me so much broadside, I'm focusing on AP. He is of course shooting me, but once again the Hindenburg is a pretty tanky cruiser, so as long as I stay angled, he shouldn't be able to do too much damage to me. He's giving me a broadside here, which will pretty clearly get him killed. Now, overall, a pretty good game. I mean, short game, still 202,000 damage. Pretty strange combination considering I was hyping up the AP, but I still got Witherer and Arsonist, because, well, of course, the reload and AR still benefit your fire chance or your fire spamming greatly. Looking at the team score, 2.2k base XP, I'll take it. I mean, it's a, what was it, epicenter type of game mode, so it's not going to be very high on the XP regardless. Detailed report though, we can see HE damage was actually only 50k, but AP was 78k, and then of course the fires made up the slack. The reason I have so much fire damage is of course I only shot HE when it was beneficial, meaning they had used repair, or I forced the repair myself and then I started fires afterwards, and in that way I maximized the value of the HE itself. But still, 202k damage in an 11-minute 37-second game is pretty great. However, I don't feel like this fully just showed how much AP damage potential you can get out of this build, so I'm gonna show a part of another game just so you can appreciate, when you really get close in with enemy ships, just how much damage you can dish out. Right, here we have an example game. I'm rushing very aggressively, probably not a surprise for those of us who have seen my older Hindenburg games plays. I still love this aggressive style, and this new build really favors it. Looking at my damage, you can see I've done 120k damage right now, but I'm charging in between two battleships, throwing my torps on the turrets on my left. I got my heal ticking, which is healing quite a nice amount, and Izumo is pushing me from the right. My team of course has pussied out, as they usually do. They're all hiding in the back behind me and letting me be the battleship. I don't mind. I have 120k damage, as I said, but then when my HP goes low and the damage starts ticking in. Let's look at this turret. He's got 32k HP, and now we start looking at the sheer amount of damage I dish out when I get close with this ship. 11k, what was that? 11k, then we have another 5k, 6k, and what was I said? 120k I had earlier. I did do some torp damage, but now I have 171k. That's how quickly the damage went up. Moving on from that short example to my actual build. Consumables, if you can afford it, get premium all you can. Heal and repair most important. Defensive AA, not Hydro. Main armaments mod 1. AA range mod 2. Main battery mod 3, of course the reload mod, welcome back my old friend. Damage control, steering gears mod 2, and finally stealth to reach that respectable stealth of 12.3. It's not good, but it's respectable. Priority target and preventive maintenance as tier 1 perks, high alert and adrenaline rush as tier 2 perks. Expert marksman is, by the way, completely useless on a Hindenburg because your turret traverses so fast, even with the reload mod. Superintendent, demolition expert, and vigilance from tier 3. and finally Stealth, my only tier 4 perk. Now, order of priority target, Adrenaline Rush, I'll probably go Demolition Expert, Concealment, and if you're still at lower tiers, well, I think Vigilance is really damn good, and then Superintendent for those higher tier ships when you can get heals, High Alert and Preventive Maintenance as the last 2 perks. Now, in the build that I actually showed you, I wasn't running, or the vids I actually showed you, I wasn't running this exact perk. In fact, I was experimenting with a very slight variation to this build. Actually, let me show you. I was running the 3-point perk, Basics of Survivability. Ultimately, I did some math though, and there's the same basic here of gaining more survivability. Of course, that's the whole idea, you want to be a tanky, but ultimately it was better to get High Alert and Preventive Maintenance than it was to get this 3-point perk. So this build is, in my opinion, actually slightly better than the build I was showing you gameplay of right now. That was really the only difference between it, but ultimately the faster High Alert and Preventive Maintenance is better, because now you have a 51-second reload, which is actually a shorter reload than the duration of fires, which makes it extremely strong. Anyway, that was my Hindenburg build. I hope you guys enjoyed it.